Hey, what's good? Let's talk about the drive system, its applications, and how to understand the RPS, play the risk versus reward with it. Now, something that needs to be understood is that Street Fighter 6 is a relatively high power level game with extremely strong and potent system mechanics. And how the characters use and are exploited by the system mechanics significantly affects their perceived strengths and weaknesses. You know, how they use the drive system, like the drive gauge, how they use EX or drive rush, if they can use drive rush more efficiently, whether or not they rely on drive impact, or in the inverse, if drive impact significantly affects how they can run offense, and the mere existence of drive parry and how well a character simply destroys drive meter. And what imperative to understand is that the drive system is both your offense and your lifeline. I essentially view it as a guard bar, as getting burnt out in this game is basically a death sentence once you're forced on defense. So while keeping your offense going is important, it's equally as important to have a general game plan and meter usage and how to approach. Something I believe is worth mentioning when talking about the drive system is how much drive damage characters do, as in fighting games can feel a lot of times as a tug of war regarding resources. The more damage you deal to someone's drive bar will force different responses. Let's take Marissa as a quick example in training mode, right? Marissa grabs you in the corner, back heavy punch, pressure, Gladius, you're already taking a bar and a half. By taking all this chip damage to your guard bar, it forces you into more precarious situations. But let's talk about the drive system as a whole. I want to start off with drive impact, which from my perspective is the least interesting part of the shell, but the presence has forced a completely different direction for Street Fighter as a whole. From my perspective, drive impact is the evolution of the focus mechanics in Street Fighter 4. Much more of a committal option in comparison, but has provided a different approach for the game. Due to its high risk and high reward option, many common approaches to Street Fighter has changed dramatically. Doing normal into special is significantly more risky, especially if that normal into special does not jail. Long range pokes that are usually fantastic in Street Fighter have a lot more risk in this game just due to the fact that they aren't special cancelable. Let's just say a scenario where it's button EX sway, something like this. If I did button EX sway, hit him with overhead, I'm +7, boom, combo, we're good to go. But something that's very interesting is due to the system mechanics, we have a sense of counter play, or more so RPS. Now in this situation, if I'm trying to do the same kind of idea, whether it's high or low, drive impact will end up being a punish. However, is this RPS? This level of interaction from my perspective is quite interesting, but I also think it's quite exhausting. This metric stack is simply so high due to this additional mechanic, and that's even before I mention drive parry, which we'll talk about in a moment. Just to wrap up about drive impact, let's just talk about one final thing, which is the corner situation. One thing I need to mention is the risk reward of drive impacting someone in the corner. Now, if I haven't stated this already, drive impact is a high risk, high reward type of tool. Being cornered, it's even scarier due to the fact of wall splat and just feeling like you can get additional damage. However, every time you try to drive impact someone in the corner, you are essentially overextending your welcome when you could just be playing in more of a position that allows you to focus more on screen position and boxing someone in. From my perspective, while I think drive impacting someone in the corner is very good and should be represented from time to time, especially when you feel like your opponent is just not ready for it, I view it more of a win more scenario, something that you kind of hear a lot if you play card games. You know, you could be in a winning position, you try to drive impact to close out the game, they react back, suddenly you're being level 3'd or you're low on gauge because you've been punish countered, and you go from this guaranteed win to a potential losing position. It's sometimes not worth the risk. All in all, while I don't think drive impact is the most interesting mechanic, I believe it's fundamentally changed Street Fighter and the approach players take. Drive parry happens to be the inverse of this. It is a low risk, low reward option that can be used primarily on defense. The damage scaling is brought down to 50%, which might seem like overkill, but because how easy of a mechanic it is, it's very important that it is low. Otherwise, you would see it way more frequently and it would be extremely obnoxious. What's interesting about Street Fighter 6 is that a lot of block strings have gaps in them. When you run a lot of pressure, you can just kind of parry in between a lot of these scenarios to try to steal your turn back. So the idea I have set up here is basically Ryu's going throw and I'm going to try to parry after he does the frame kill, and at any moment I can basically just get perfect parry to basically steal my turn back. By perfect parrying the melee, I obviously get a punish and from back corner, stealing the position. Now of course he could throw me in the situation and I get punish countered, which is supposed to be the appropriate response. Now if you look in this situation, look how much damage I'm going to take as well as how much drive gauge I lose.
This is my chance.
A massive punish. And of course, I could potentially just parry not just the wake up option, but I could parry later on in the string if I want to take a risk elsewhere.
You're not getting through.
Just as an example of being able to basically take the corner. Now the damage, once again, is low, but it's about screen positioning and basically stealing your turn back. And to drive one final point is the fact that this is extremely safe. Look at my inputs and look what I'm trying to do. I'm just pressing parry in between just trying to get it, and it's not coming out. And when it does come out, I'm safe. I can block immediately right afterwards, so it doesn't really matter. And I get drive gauge back. And sometimes I get perfect parry. There's really no reason not to do it. Essentially, this mechanic, from my perspective, it will be incredibly obnoxious at a higher level due to the fact that there's so much RPS behind it, and will, generally speaking, force players to take a very different approach about how they run offense to work around this type of RPS, probably incorporating more throws, try and be a little bit more patient, and vice versa. Players might start being a little bit more aggressive on defense once they notice that their opponent is attempting to deal with parry in a different way. It's not to say, once again, as you saw earlier, that it doesn't come without risk. Losing a bar and a half in drive gauge is a big deal. Taking 20% of life is a big deal. These are things that I believe are well adjusted, and don't hold drive parry but tap it instead, so you have a more safer tool to your disposal. The next core mechanic I want to talk about really is just drive rush. Just like the previous tools, it has dramatically changed Street Fighter and significantly increased the pacing of the game. As a combo tool, it's made conversions a lot easier, as you don't have to do like one button hit confirms, and you can kind of just press drive rush by tapping forward twice to extend your combo, or to just keep pressure going if it's not hit confirmed. And while I don't really have much to offer when it comes to general analysis, it's a fun tool that provides combo expression, so I like it. In neutral, slightly different story. Varying speeds and distances create quite a uniquely annoying game plan for only a few characters to have access to this nonsense. A big one being DJ. Now, some people might complain about some other characters. I think I've seen people talk about Jury, drive rush before, and from my perspective, it can be frustrating. I don't think it's as big as a deal as people are making it out to be. I think as time progresses, people will get better at checking these drive rushes in neutral. More so, what I think is what's going to happen is that drive rush will continue to stay around in neutral, but be more of a niche tool when the mental stack is high and when people are concerned about what's going to happen next. A great example of this is that I think Geef will be a bad factor to drive rush, as doing a sudden drive rush into SVD when he's just outside of SVD range. People won't be expecting it as much when there's so much they have to look for when it comes to normals, a regular dash, a jump, and what have you. And last but certainly least, I want to briefly mention drive reversal, a weakish defensive tool that the current perspective by the community is that it's underwhelming. And while I actually do agree that underwhelming, I don't think people are really using it intelligently. I'll show you why. The way I look at drive reversal from my perspective is that you want to look for guaranteed opportunities where drive reversal just makes sense. So if your opponent's just doing jab, jab, there's no reason to use drive reversal. The odds of it basically being blocked are just too high and too against you. But instead, what you could potentially do is the following. In this scenario, Kim got a successful teleport into a stand heavy kick. So because we know we can't actually cancel out of the stand heavy kick, and the fact that stand heavy kick has so much recovery, we were able to just get a successful drive reversal. This is the future of drive reversal from my perspective. It's just used in guaranteed spots, not just swung just because you're scared, right? And then by doing so, you can reset back to neutral and then continue to essentially try to fight back. Now, technically speaking, you could use it at different moments. If you're wrong, will you die a horrible death? Yes, naturally you will, just don't use it poorly. But it is effective in moments in the match where you have a high chance or a guaranteed chance to just reset back to neutral. So that's how I suggest you should use it. All in all, I believe the drive system is incredible with maybe a couple potential pain points. Maybe I'm wrong about parry and it's just too safe. Maybe I'm wrong about drive rush in that it will continue to be a successful neutral tool, and maybe drive impact is more than a scrub buster and it really does hold this too high a reward given the scenarios that it's used and represented. I'm not wrong about drive reversal though. I think it's a little weak, but at least you can use it in some guaranteed pain points. But for a start of a new fighting game, I believe Capcom did a great job. So let me know in those comments below. Subscribe if you like the channel and the content I'm putting out there. I plan on putting out some more gameplay related stuff as well as these analyst pieces. And like if you like the video, I really appreciate it. Also check out my Twitch. I stream Lily content or some of this other characters while I'm mashing with my friends. And my TikTok for just some funny clips that happen on my stream. This has been Bit Peace.